business, I can guess that changing the way we do business is going to save a minimal amount of money.
Yeah.
The type of cuts that we're talking about, $1.7 million deficit, is catastrophic to the school system. Mrs. Vaca just talked about 80% of our budget being salaries. That's between 25 and 35 teachers for a system that has 200 teachers, just so you know, and that's depending on the salary range they're at. It could be as many as 35 teachers to satisfy 107 cuts. So early release days on Tuesdays and Wednesdays are going to be the least of our problem. And to suggest, and I know Bell didn't want me to suggest this, but to suggest we can fix these things structurally or do business differently and solve the problem is absolutely, not going to work. It just isn't. So if it's $1.7 million, you're looking at a dramatic decrease in teaching personnel and personnel in general, and a dramatic increase in class size and many other cuts as well. I mean, there's just no getting around it, and there's no sense in trying to soft soap it either. So.
Typically, we direct the superintendent areas that we agree on, we can move forward with a reduction. I can't imagine what to even suggest. I mean, I was thinking eliminating kindergarten programs from North Reading altogether. Closing school 1 day a week forever. Shortening the school year. And even that wouldn't get us anywhere near the kind of money we need to come up with.
We've even thrown out things, and this isn't something I support, and I don't know about the rest of the committee. I know Mr. Venezia doesn't support it, but a lot of people say, well, geez, look at athletics because that's extracurricular. Well, I think most of us feel that athletics is an important part of the whole child, which we talked a lot about here tonight. So we thought about, geez, let's have the athletic program fully funded by fees. So what we're doing there is we're going to raise about another $200,000 because the athletic program is already 50% supported by fees, and we're just going to put that on the back of the families who have kids in the schools, which is what we do all the time, which is what the town does with the trash fee. We can't raise the taxes, so let's invent a new fee or let's increase the fee. But even if we did that, it's $200,000, which isn't getting us close to what we need. And I think this doesn't make it any better. This is a statewide problem, and I talk about this all the time, but when you're coming from as low a level as we are, when you cut, the first cut hits the bone. Whereas other towns, there's a lot of layers before they get to the bone, and that's the problem. And I think that at some point, the entire system has to be revamped because you can't continue to afford to grow a school budget 5, 6, 7% a year to provide level services when the town's revenues aren't rising that fast. And I don't know when that's going to happen, and unfortunately, I think the kids that we have who are in school now are going to pay somewhat of a price over the next few years until it does happen, until those changes are made. I saw the state, is it the education commissioner? Mr. Chester had some ideas about putting off the history MCAS test, which is supposed to become a requirement in 2014 or 2012, is it? Or 14? That would save money of putting a cap on charter schools, which takes money out of the districts until the funding crisis is ended. That would save some money, but still, we're looking at some serious cuts.
Those are all interesting, but they're not the real money that we would need to have. And the problem is that several of us have been on the email system that involves all of the other school committees in the state and have communicated back and forth between those other members. And this is a statewide problem. The difficulty we have is that we're on the bottom end of the per pupil spending as it is now, and as a result, we really don't have any place to go. And if we were to reduce the staff by 30 members this year, or in 2010, what are we going to do in 2011? It's going to come back, and we're going to have to drop another 30. I mean, we're going to run out of teachers, don't we? So that isn't an acceptable solution. There needs to be some changes in the way that the funding is done at the state. The amount of state aid that we get. And there needs to be some additional revenue sources for the state to tap into to do that. And we've made some suggestions to the governor. The Readiness Project Finance Group has looked at funding. And as a matter of fact, the proposal mandate to the governor actually came back in a reflection from that committee, I think probably independently, but the idea of raising the sales tax by 1%, dedicating that 1% to education, and my suggestion was to spread that uniformly over the entire Commonwealth. Every pupil get an even amount out of that. The Readiness Finance Group, of course, has some other ideas of how that would be distributed, but we can keep hoping that it will come back. Just to give you an idea what that would amount to, it would be in the order of $850 to $900 per student, which if you run it out for 2,800 students, that's about $2.5 million. That would be a nice change in the state revenue that we would receive. There's a lot of action out there. The governor understands that the property tax is being stressed. North Reading is 47th from the highest property tax rate in the state, but we're 16th from the bottom in the amount funding per pupil. So it seems like there's something wrong with that equation. Something's got to be amiss in that. We're working on it. I'm trying to find another source. I feel a little alone out there in that process, but we keep at it, and Mel and Maureen will be able to verify that I've sent out quite a number of emails to that group on behalf of the kids and education. We'll keep working at it.
I think it's important that the group of parents here tonight and other parents stay involved. Hopefully we'll have some public sessions again. We're going to have to make recommendations, but it's also good to hear back from the community for a little guidance as to what we should do. Doesn't mean we're going to do what you ask us to do, but at least it gives us an indication of what you're thinking. And I think that's important. It's just a really difficult time, especially when we were able to restore a lot of things this year. Where last year we did the best we could, and I think we did great with limited resources, but in my opinion it wasn't a great school year. And I think this year I've heard nothing but positive things from middle school parents, high school parents, new principals who are great, new staff that's great. Very few, I think Dr. Trillant would confirm this, very few issues or complaints from parents about lack of this course or lack of that kind of thing going on. We're meeting our requirements this year in a good way. So it's really disheartening to have to go back and look at it and say, now how are we going to gut the system again? And that's where we are right now. And as Mr. Bauer said, we're going to work at it, and we know we have to educate the children, but it's going to be a real challenge moving forward.
Just a couple of points for the public to know. One, the school committee is actively working with other officials in the state. Like we said, we work with other school committees, we test ideas, we ask questions, and we're on top of that daily. Second, I think it's important to know that North Reading is looking into regionalization. It's, the buzzword that the state is trying to get communities to look into different collaborative efforts and regionalizing efforts with neighboring towns. And the superintendent has spearheaded an effort with surrounding superintendents, and they're meeting regularly, and they're talking about, can we share AP programs? We share some level of sports programs as it is with Wilmington and Linfield. What other ideas can we do to save programs from being shut down and still offer them to students? So we're looking forward to find out, what will come out of that effort. Certainly Carl Nelson does the same with business managers in surrounding communities. He gets some of the best prices for most of our products for the school system through that collaborative effort. And And on the local level, with the finance planning team, the finance committee and the board of selectmen and the town officials, we're working very closely to look at the school department needs and where it fits in with the town needs, and we're all in it together because the town as a whole is going to look much different in the next fiscal year. And so far, we are approaching that as a unified effort. So there's an awful lot being done behind the scenes that we don't always, stop and take a moment to talk about. But if you can think of anything else, if you have any ideas, it's important to communicate them to us. This is an unprecedented time, and we need to really think through it rather than just get angry and frustrated.
The Readiness Finance Committee that has just reported in the last week or so was pushing regionalizing as a way of reducing costs. But when we look at our per pupil costs, those per pupil costs are lower than the regional systems. And there are one of the advantages you get, of course, of the regional system is you consolidate in the administration costs. There are only 6 of the regional systems that have lower per pupil administrative costs than North Reading. So we are really an efficient system, perhaps almost too efficient for our own good. We don't have any place to cut.
Steve, do you want to summarize it a little?
Can I just comment about the current budget for this year? Again, in my judgment, we're very fortunate to be where we are this year because it's amazing how much you can restore faith back into the school system. And I know we've accomplished that this year. And it was just a real pleasure and delight to see the example of that work. And I want to thank Mr. McKay and the staff for working with students every day to not just here at the Hood School, but in all of our schools, because this really is what we're all aiming for. But at the same time, I think it's very important to remember that we're still in a deficit this year. We anticipate in the next 1 to 3 weeks that the governor will announce a second round and then a third round of cuts. And while the first round of cuts avoided hitting local aid, it is fully anticipated that by the end of January there will be reductions in state aid. The question is not when and if, but how much. And the numbers that have been floated out there, and there seems to be some pretty clear agreement on that, is a reduction of up to 10%. And the question is whether that's 10% of all the aid that comes back, or whether it would be prorated from half of the year going forward. Regardless, it still is an amount of money that would put not only the schools but the town over the top, over the edge. And I'm not sure how we would get through the rest of this year sustaining that kind of reduction. And that's just for FY09. The anticipation is that that would then carry forward into the next fiscal year.
Thanks, David. Next, we move on to new business. Before we get to the agenda items, I just want to respond to something that was in the newspaper the other day and just make something very clear about what Dr. Trout has committed to for fiscal 2010, which is to not take a salary increase in fiscal 2010. And I just wanted to make that clear. I know it was mentioned in the paper, but I want the public to understand that Dr. Trout has made that commitment to us. David, do you want to comment on the report on utilities that Kyle had put together?
Yes. It was really nice to see the green team here tonight. Back in the fall, I had laid out a series of reductions that I wanted to see to meet the current deficit, and one of those was to be very aggressive with our energy consumption. And beyond the money and beyond the economics, I do believe that it is